like them on the internet anywhere. I don't know what's happened to the guy after 2014. That was the last time that we were able to be in touch with him, and he quit posting anything on his YouTube site. And I don't know if he died, if he just lost interest, or if you want to take the most sinister view, if he was shut up and told not to do it anymore. I don't know. But for 2013 and 2014, scroll through, and like 2013, I think it was very early in the year, so you'd have to scroll way down to the bottom to find the photos that he gave us that year. So I like to give people things where they can do some searching around for themselves and see things that are very, very unique. And I'll give you one more thing that people might enjoy doing. You can just type in on the regular internet search bar, just type in NASA Soho photos, and it's Soho is just SOHO, and that is the abbreviated name for the camera that's always taking pictures of the sun. And we discovered on July 17th that this giant UFO was starting to come toward the sun, and I just checked it just before we got on the air, and it is still traversing across the field of view by the sun, and it's humongous.
Wow.
So that's another thing. Just type in NASA Soho photos. Usually what will come up at the very top will just say something like real-time images, and the really good ones are from the LASCO. It's LASCO C3 camera, and that's something else that will get everybody's minds, thinking and pondering greater things.
Absolutely, that's interesting stuff. Have you gotten any reports from USOs coming out of the lakes any time recently?
It was interesting. I was at a Bigfoot conference in Georgia not that too long ago, and I was interviewing a man with the intention of getting a Bigfoot story. Well, as I talked to him, I found out that he had been in the Navy for 10 years, and 5 of those years he was on ships that were tracking submarines all over the world. And they would see, on 5 occasions, they saw a UFO go underneath their ship, and it was, bigger than the ship. And he said it would change colors. Right now, I'm not sure what the colors were. It's like blue, maybe red, green, yellow, or something like that. And it would change in colors, which you will also see in the air sometimes, where there will be a changing of the colors in the appearance of the UFO. But here's the interesting part. They were required to list it on their logbook as a, let's see if I remember the word, bioluminescence. And a bioluminescence are these little tiny creatures in the ocean that will self-illuminate. Well, they're just not going to be in schools as big as a ship, and they are certainly not all going to change colors at exactly the same time. But instead of recording it as an underwater UFO, they recorded it as a bioluminescence. And that's why sometimes getting to the truth of things can be tricky.
Yeah, because that's there is a lot of sea animals that do that, but it would take a real big one or a bunch of them together to make. Yeah, that's just kind of ludicrous. Yeah.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
So how
what they were required to do?
Yeah, last time I've heard you talk with Gary before, and you were talking. You touched on some underground bases in North Carolina, or the mountains joining anyway. Any updates or any other intel on that?
Well, one of our most recent postings, and again on the home page on the right-hand side, we list I think like the 20 most recent postings, and at the very top, let's see, let me open it here so I can give you the right information. The second one from the top is called Secret Underground Tunnels, See How They're Made. And, people wonder how in the world these underground tunnels are made. And back in 2011, we had two former U.S. Air Force staff sergeants who were investigating one of the underground facilities here, and it's referred to as PARI, P-A-R-I, and it stands for Pisgah Astronomical Research Institute. And there is a city-sized secret facility beneath this institute. And these two Air Force sergeants said that in their investigations, they are confident that there are underground tunnels connecting these various underground facilities that he said, in their opinion, go all the way up the spine of the Appalachian Mountains up toward Washington, D.C. And, here locally, we certainly found things that would give credence to what they were saying, because people who live along the Balsam Ridge, which is part of the mountain ridge where this Perry facility is located, different residents have reported, underground grinding sounds and machines and pounding beneath their homes that would last for, just a certain amount of time, and then it would be all over. And that would certainly be indicative of the mining of the underground tunnel right through that mountain. So there were, for a time there, we had a number of those kind of reports.
Yeah, I remember you touched on them before, and I know you mentioned something too about there was certain species of aliens that didn't like us too well, or we should be aware of, or something along those lines.
Some of the research that I've done has been on the little people, specifically.
Oh.
I've done a book on the Cherokee little people, but when I went up into eastern Tennessee and met with a man who has little people living on his forested land, he, this gets very involved, but he and his family have been able to communicate with these little people for several generations. And it's the little people that are very afraid of a species that they call the Dominators. And, we hear about evil aliens, but that's the name the little people gave them, was the Dominators. And they said that the Dominators refer to the earth as the farm or the ranch, and that it's really creepy, but that they use humans as a food source. And when you tie that together with the very unusual number of people that just disappear completely, and oftentimes children, it just makes you wonder if what these little people are telling us might be true.
Yeah, really. You brought up the little
and,
people.
I've always thought that people should be very careful. A lot of people are so excited they want to go out and come on UFO, let me see you, take me for a ride. I think that's very foolish, because just like with human beings, we have the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I don't think you should just put yourself out there without some sense of what you're doing.
True, I totally agree with you, because just like humans, there's good ones, bad ones, and ugly ones. And I think everything biologically in nature or out in the universe is probably along the same way. Wouldn't you agree?
And
yeah.
And I think people can get in a lot of trouble if they're, these, like the abductions, that's usually a very horrific experience for most people. And it's primarily being done by a certain race of greys and reptilians. And as far as I'm concerned, they're violating universal laws or principles, and I don't think they have a right to, abduct people against their will. And I think we have to be a little bit careful. At the same time, I do not think that all aliens are bad. I think some of them are indeed our ancestors and have been trying to guide us along periodically. I think they've been the ones that, we always hear about on the Ancient Alien show on the History Channel, that have come along at different periods in our ancient history and have provided us with technology and things that have helped us evolve a little bit more quickly. There's a great book by William Tompkins, or Bill Tompkins, and he worked for NASA at the highest levels. He worked directly with Wernher von Braun and other ones of that caliber. And he, in his books, explains that there were ETs working with NASA, and they were the reason that some of our technology developed so rapidly, after the war. And he said there were, different kinds, and there were some that were very, very human, and then there were reptilians who actually could briefly take on the appearance of a human, but he said that he actually saw them when they thought that they were, out of sight, transformed back into reptilians. I mean, some of this stuff gets absolutely creepy, and it's so sci-fi that you just wonder, can this really be real? But when somebody who has the experience and the credibility of somebody like Bill or William Tompkins, you have to consider that what he's saying might be true.
Yeah, because it makes it hard with all the information out there. How do you pick and choose what's true, what's disinformation, or just what's real,
I know. It's like walking through a minefield, and part of you has to trust your own gut feeling. If something just feels absolutely off, unbelievable, well, maybe it's unbelievable. And again, whenever I get stories, I check them out several different ways before I decide that they're worthy of putting on the website, because there's a lot of people out there who don't have anything better to do, and they have so much fun doing Photoshops and Photoshop photos and, just putting malarkey out there, and you have to work real hard not to be tricked by it.
Yeah, and that makes it hard for everybody in the field of investigating, because it puts us a couple steps back, when we're trying to find these things out, what's going on.
Yeah, and we always have to do our research. And you were asking about anything else new with the underground facilities. I was contacted by somebody who lives near the Perry facility, and he said that people in that area were hearing, booming underground sounds, and that there was digging going on again at this facility, which, as far as I can see, is probably the oldest here in the western North Carolina mountains. In this case, I actually used Google Earth and started scanning it for myself, and I actually found a hole that was mostly covered over by two large tarps, and there was earth-moving equipment, and you could see where dirt from down below was being spread out over a hillside. So there was definitely some kind of expansion going on at that facility, or tunneling was being done, one or the other. But that was a time when Google Earth was very helpful in, confirming a story that I just received, by phone and by email.
Right. Interesting. Any new reports on the Bigfoots or cryptids in your area?
I just recently counted it. We have done, I think it's 65 postings about Bigfoot. We've gotten so many that, again, back on the homepage, we have a whole section devoted to ETs, Bigfoot, and other beings, but it has a lot of Bigfoot stories in it. It's interesting. We see and hear the Bigfoot stories from the same area where we get a lot of the UFO reports. And I think we have to, at least ponder why we're seeing those two things in the same areas. But yeah, the Bigfoot, they definitely live here in the remote sections of, the wooded mountains.
That was bringing me to my next question, Mary. Do you think there's a connection with the Bigfoot and aliens, or maybe it's just a coincidence, or what's your feeling on that?
I'm going to go blank on the man's first name. His last name is a Greek name. It's like Lapper. Oh, shoot, I can't think of it now. But the man that I'm trying to think of is an expert on Bigfoot. He's written 2 books about them, and he has concluded